All right, so welcome to the main part of the meeting. We got the preliminaries over. I think you did a great job. So before we get started, I tell you, I counted 39 here. And how many do we have online? I know it's at least 30. Is that? But if you're at home, 31. Okay, that's great. We want to thank Keith Buchanan for setting all this up, because without him, you'd have to be here or you'd just be missing the meeting. He's been doing this since COVID hit, and he's done a great job. He's like one of the first to get here and the last to leave. And he also did a great bang up job on Bee School. So let's give a round of applause to Keith. Okay, my job is the easy job. I just need to get out of the way so you can get to the speakers. First thing we're going to do is cover some of the business part of the meeting, and then Chris Hagwood is going to give an update on the swarm team. And then our main feature presentation is the pollination, pollinators, and the new Open Minds 4-H Club. And Roger Montague is going to present that. Next slide, please. All right, so first is our treasury report from Susan Benton. And so we have $21,383.94. Deposits last month, you can see we had a lot of memberships on the website, got over 2,000 through the website and 471 by cash and check. We still have people that do that. Bless your heart. I think that's what they say in the South. Expenses since last month. So those online payments, they have fees that are associated with that. So that's what you're seeing. And then we also collect state memberships. So that's the $1,700.20 or $1,725. Next slide. Oh, by the way, we keep these on the website, in the meeting minutes, if you ever want to go back and look. This is the secretary report from Gordon. So we're up to 244 members who have paid, and that we expect there's probably about 100 that haven't renewed yet. So if you haven't done that, you can renew at the website. Renew by March to keep the benefits of the newsletter, members only section of the website, swarm team mentorship program, and you get to borrow the club equipment. Next slide. All right, just one more reminder that we have got a new website. The transition is pretty much complete. You can go to either site. If you go to the old site, then it just has pointers to the new site. In April, we're going to go back to it. We'll just have one web page, and we'll be using the old URL. Next slide. Okay, swarm team update. The signups have been going really well. Zone 1 has at least 11 since the last time I checked, and 4 people signed up to be captains in Zone 1. So we'll have to work that out. I think we'll probably keep two captains there. Zone 2, 3, and 5 all had either 6 or 7, and Zone 2 had 2 captains. Now, the problem we're running into is Zone 4. Nobody wants to live out there. I don't know what it is out there, but there is nobody who signed up out there. Oh, Susan's from out there. Okay, so Susan's going to be captain, I guess. No, she hasn't signed up. So I also need a captain for Zone 3, Zone 5, and Zone 4. So next slide. This is how you sign up. You could go to either website. It'll point you to the same place, and you're going to go to the same place that someone's going to report form. They're going to go to the Help I've Got Bees page. And the first link on that page is a members only link, and it's the Swarmless sign up. It's a link to the Swarmless sign up guidelines. And you just follow the links from there, and that'll take you to the sign up page. Now, if you've never caught a swarm before, when you sign up, there's a comment field, and you can say, I've never caught a swarm. I'd just like to go along. And then you become the captain's problem, because he's got to figure out how to get you to the swarm. So he's going to find someone who's going to catch the swarm, and then he'll just probably let you know about it. And then you can go watch, or you can help out. It's often when I go to catch a swarm and it's on a branch, I would just love to have somebody that would cut that branch for me while I'm holding the branch, and then they cut it off for me. That would be perfect, but it's kind of hard to do both at the same time. You can't hold loppers while you're trying to hold the branch. So that would be a big help too, and you get to, watch how it's done. Next slide. One thing, we still need captains. So there's a checkbox there if you want to be a captain when you sign up. All right, volunteers. We've got new volunteers this month. Lori Harris has volunteered to be the education coordinator. And you see down here under help wanted, she's got a lot of work to do. She didn't know it, but she's got a little problem. We only have about 6 speakers who have signed up. So if you can screen capture this or write down that URL, that's where you sign up to join the list of people who will be volunteering to get speakers. So you won't get a notification unless you're on this list. And so right now she only has 6 people getting those notifications. And we already have people wanting speakers. It's like school groups, church groups, garden clubs, you name it. People want speakers to come and talk about bees. Sometimes it's just they want a table and somebody to sit there, during an event, and people will walk up and you just talk about bees. It's not always a presentation. The next person was April Reeves. She volunteered to be the membership secretary, so she'll be handling the membership issues. Swarm team coordinator, we got Robin Dreschler to do that. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But she'll be keeping our captains in line, and she'll be querying them for information once a month just to see how many swarms we got and maybe who caught the swarms. I don't know. Honeybee Day, that's a day at the State Farmers Market. And Susan Benton has volunteered to coordinate that effort. So later on, when we know the date, she'll be asking for people to work the table that day at the farmers market. Help wanted, I already talked about captains and speakers. We still need event coordinators for Bug Fest. That's a one-day event downtown Raleigh. I believe you'll be working with, if I'm correct, it's the Science Museum. Is that right? Downtown? Yeah. So you'll be emailing them and then figuring out who's going to be coming to set up and tear down and who's going to work the table that day. Then there's the state fair booth, and this is a more significant thing in terms of coordination. You got to figure out what theme you're going to use, and you'll have a small committee and figure out what it is you want to display, and then you got to get people to volunteer to bring those items to the fair. Okay, next slide. Upcoming events, March 3rd through 5th is the state meeting. If I remember, you have to look at the state website, but I believe the author of Swarm Essentials is going to be there to talk. And I think they have some speakers from Purdue University to talk about ankle biters. That's bees that bite the feet off of the varroa mites. But there are other speakers. You have to check out the website. April 10th is our first Hands on the Hive. And I think Susan talked about that, but you can take the practical and that should say the written certified tests at those events. I believe you can also take the certified test at the spring meeting. And that's also where you can take the journeyman test and the master beekeeper test. Okay, next slide. And these are the remaining dates for our monthly meetings for the year. And next month we'll be at Pullen Park, and then for the rest of them we'll be at Wake County Commons building. That's over on Cary Drive, the east side of Raleigh. And there's one date we don't have, and that's actually Election Day, November 8th. We don't have a spot for it. It won't be either of these 2 locations, but we will find the location, and we are going to have it Election Day. We decided the last thing we want is for people who play with stinging insects to participate in our elections. So that's why that is. Next slide. So now I'd like to ask Rick Bordeaux to come up. He wants to speak for a minute.
Thanks. So Gordon Goking and I are putting together a presentation that will be held here in April and May for the public. It'll be free. This is in conjunction with the Pollen Park programs that they do from time to time. So what I need as we put this together, I want to do some slides of some backyard apiaries. So I need pictures of your beehives, your apiaries. So if some of you will send those in, I'd like to have at least 10. So I'm hoping to get a lot more than that. And I'll choose what looks like the most representative from those and just send those to me, as you can see there, at rickbordeaux@gmail.com. Thanks. Yeah, take a picture of the screen so you'll have it.
So because we're still seeking some more swarm team people, I just wanted to go over kind of how swarm team works so that everyone's understanding what's going on with swarms with our club. So back in 2020, when pandemic first hit, I helped Kim out by just being a swarm team coordinator. We really hadn't had that. The president just tried to manage reports from the captains and tried to recruit captains, et cetera. So I kind of coordinated that year, and then we felt like that was helpful. So now it's kind of a position to have. So really, I just kind of want to go over how swarm team works. These are some pictures of some swarms that I went to last year. And let me get this going where I can see what y'all are seeing. So the swarm team has a few goals. Primarily, we want to get the swarms out of people's yards as quickly as possible, because we want them not to spray them. People get scared of stinging insects and they start spraying. So we want them to call us instead. And we want to educate them while we're removing the swarm about what's going on and why it's swarming. And then we want to balance the response amongst the club, because there's usually a lot of people that want to get free bees. So we kind of try to spread that around a little bit. Next slide. I don't have an operator, but there are really kind of 4 roles for swarm team. We've got the coordinator is, I can't remember her name. So Robin, stand up, everybody look at Robin. She's the coordinator. So Robin, we need you to find us some more captains. That's your job. And then one more slide. Yeah, so and then we have swarm captains. So 1 per zone at least we want, and then it's good to have 2 swarm team members. And then we've been usually pretty good about letting people be observers and helpers. So if you're nervous about trying to go out and capture a swarm on your first time alone, then we'll work on trying to get you some observation time as well. So coordinator has a couple of roles to solicit swarm team captains and team members, and really just to gather the monthly stats. So once we've got our teams going, really just gathering those monthly stats and reporting them back to the club is really the only thing that you have to do. And then our captains, they're kind of important folks. So I was a captain in probably 2018 and 19. And it can be a challenge because you've got so many people to keep up with. You've got to keep their names handy pretty much at all times. You've got to answer a lot of phone calls. I got a lot of phone calls when I was on the website, and they're not always about honeybees. So it does take patience, because the answer you give them is the answer they want to hear. Because if it's not honeybees, we're not getting the bees away from their house. We can't remove ground bees. We can't remove yellow jackets. There's not a way to do that. So it does take patience to talk them off the ledge so they don't commit suicide over these bees. So we do need to screen non-honeybees. So we don't want to just get the phone number, send somebody all the way out to their house. It might take someone an hour to get ready, go to their house and find out it was just yellow jackets. So we do want to try to figure out what are they first, and also to make sure they're not in a structure before we send someone. And then we've got to contact the team members and relay the information. And like I said before, we want to balance the response so that everybody gets a fair chance. I will say that, I've got on there to have backup captains as well. So one of the things that I found most helpful for you captains, if you've never captained before, try to get the person to send you a text message. So they're calling you, you confirm with them, I'm really sure these are honeybees. I'm going to send somebody out. Try to get them to send you a text message that includes their phone number in the text message. their name, their address, and the photos, because they're pretty good about sending you their address and their name, but not their phone number. And then that takes a second. Everything takes time. So it takes a second to then go find their phone number and send the phone number to the person that you're sending as well. So if you can get them to send you a text message with their phone number, that does help. And then y'all aren't seeing what I'm seeing. I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. One more. Yeah, one more. And then hit that 2 more times. All right. So one of the things I did on my contacts was just made sure that, like, in a business name, there was swarm listed somewhere for each person on my list, so that if I didn't have a printed list or didn't have it anywhere else except my phone, I could just type the word swarm in my contact list and I could get everybody in my zone somewhere in there, and I could start going down that list. So the swarm team members, next slide. Somebody has a question? So about the only thing else that can be relocated is bumblebees. So really nothing else can be relocated. I'm not relocating hornets. I'm not relocating yellow jackets. So hornets, I mean, it's a long process, depends. Hornets to me, it's like, I try to talk them into just leaving them alone if they're far enough up in the tree. But yellow jackets, I kill yellow jackets. I mean, I got no patience with no yellow jacket. Because they're in the ground and they're usually bothering people and they're stinging people. So yellow jackets got to go. But that's the killing of yellow jackets, not removal. I will tell you that I'm Chris Hagwood, and if you can save my contact info, I am willing to relocate bumblebees. They are not fun and they are not easy to relocate, but I'll do it. So that's not going to be part of the swarm team list, but if it is bumblebees and they've seen the nest, I'll probably be willing to do it. So the swarm team members, really, I just wanted to let you know that it is helpful if you'll prepare in advance. Just get your stuff together in one spot so you're not trying to find it. You've got to answer your phone. I know we've had comments before from people that are on the list that they would rather just get like a group text and be able to respond to the text, but we've got to go down the list and make sure only one person's going. It doesn't help when 2 and 3 people go and they're all expecting to get the bees. So we do need you to answer your phone, put the swarm team captain's name in your contact list so you know that that's who's calling you. It's not some random number and you're sending it to voicemail. You've got to safely respond and safely remove the swarm. So just do it. Safety is important. We don't want people risking any kind of injury just to get bees. It's not worth it. We do want you to educate people while you're there, like we said before. And we want you to get the bees home and give them a hive and manage them so that they have an increased risk of survival or increased chance of survival, because swarms have a tough time, and it's helpful if they get in a hive and get managed by you. Next slide. So typical equipment you're going to need is some sort of bucket on a pole, unless they're head level or below. We do get a lot of calls where they're nice and low, and those are wonderful calls, but a lot of them are up in a tree. And so if you can manage something on a pole, you're not having to climb a ladder, then you can get them in a bucket with a pole. But if you can carry a ladder to the scene, then ladders are helpful. And then having some loppers, like he said, some sort of way to trim limbs, but always ask the owner first. Don't ever cut anything without asking. But sometimes it's easier to cut the limb and then drop the limb into a bucket or a hive box instead of shaking them off of the limb. It's just, they don't go as big of a cloud of bees, and you can get them settled a lot faster. And then you always want to have your box to get the bees home. It doesn't have to always be a hive box or a nuke, but cardboard boxes can work if you need it. But you do need some way to get them home. Additional equipment on the next slide. A bee vac is handy. It's not necessary, but it is handy. There's times it comes in. It's useful when bees are in bushes and you can't get them shaken out of them very easily. Really extra long poles are helpful, and a frame of open brood is very helpful. If you can afford the time to get that and take it with you to the scene, they're much more likely to settle on that frame of brood than they are just an empty frame or an empty box. And then you can see this picture. So I've got the nuke in another box, so they will settle on and around the nuke box, but they won't necessarily always go in very quickly. So I set the new box into a much larger box. And then it has vent holes. And once they've settled in and virtually all are inside the bigger box, I can put the lid on it, put it in my truck and take it home pretty quick. So that's helpful as well. So questions before we move on? Okay, yeah. So I'd said before that we want to make sure we're not sending swarm team people that are not prepared to remove houses or remove bees from structures. So that's called a cutout. So once the bees have found a cavity in someone's house and went into the house, it's going to require carpentry to get them out. And they just need to know that they're going to have to, at this point, with we're not keeping a list, the club's not keeping a list, so they're going to have to use their own resources to find a qualified person that's willing to do the work to get the bees out of the house. I don't know what to tell you other than I can and will do it in the Garner area, but I don't like to travel for that. Jason up at Garden Supply is also willing to do that. But beyond that, I'm not sure how they're going to find a resource. So I would say once you arrive at scene, it can be as few as 10 or 15 minutes. It depends on how quickly you get them in a container. So if they're low hanging on a branch, you're able to trim the branch, set 95% of the bees down into a box and close the box, you can leave. But if you have to shake the bees or get them, with a pole in a bucket, there's some settling time to get them to settle into your container. And so it varies, but if they're nearby my house, then I'll usually let them settle for the afternoon and get them at dusk. That way I'm just getting most of the bees back. So that could be either leaving after 30 or 40 minutes and coming back at dusk, or it could be just getting 30, 45 minutes worth of bees to settle and then taking what you can. Any more questions before we start our program? All right.
Thank you, Chris. So, Jim, do you have anything before we move on?
Okay, just introduce Roger Montague. Roger started beekeeping 5 years ago in honor of his father, who kept bees when Roger was a child. He has 5 colonies at home and works with Garden Supply in Cary, supporting their beekeeping and host-a-hive program as an instructor. He's an avid and prominent proponent of pollinator-friendly beekeeping. Please welcome Roger Montague.
Thank you. I'm not prominent, I can guarantee you that. Is this working? Okay, cool. We'll find out if this thing is working since it's fall here a minute ago. I've been looking forward to this for a long time for several reasons. Number one, I get to talk about bees. I get to show you photographs of my bees, my apiary, my plantings, and actually my 2 granddaughters. And I get to, again, talk about young people. And I'll introduce them a little better later, but I have 2 4-H folk here with me tonight. You mentioned I've been a beekeeper for about 5 years. I'm a member of this club, but probably most of you have never seen me or never heard of me. And possibly one of those reasons is this. I like bees better than people, okay? I know why a bee stings me. I don't know why sometimes that humans sting me. So I'm better off with honeybees. Mentioned that I started beekeeping about 5 years ago. I had worked with USDA for 40 years and Bayer Crop Science for 5 years, and I just got tired of working. So I just decided to retire. And I thought, I'm going to miss work. My father told me never to quit work. I'm going to miss work. So what can I do to replace all this strategic thinking and operational planning and taking care of stuff, which is what I did as an employee? What can I do to replace that? And what I found out after I studied for a year trying to figure out something and decided to take up beekeeping, and did so for a lot of reasons. but one was to honor my father. This is a 60-some-year-old photograph of my father. You can see him in the left part of the screen. That's Jemima there running behind him. That was one of the cows we had. And you can see the beehive there in the red circle. So it did in part to honor my father. He would be proud of the hives that I have. Okay, here is my apiary a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago. I have three horizontal hives that I'm experimenting with, and 2 Langstroth hives. These are custom made, and we'll show you another photograph of those in a minute. But I'm just trying to figure out how to keep bees and not have to lift so much. So we'll see how that goes. Tonight, we're going to talk about a project that I'm involved with regarding a brand new 4-H club. It is not the Open Minds Club, even though they are open-minded. It's the Growing Minds Club. So that cracked me up when I saw that. They're open-minded, but the name of it is the Growing Minds. I have 2 ladies with us tonight. The first is Emma James. She's a youth coordinator, youth development coordinator with Extension Service here in Wake County. Emma lives in near Clayton on a farm, and she'll tell you more about 4-H here in a second. So Emma, if you would come forward, please. Do you want to use?
No, I work with kids. I can talk.
Does she need the? She'll need a hand mic or something for Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for having us and for having 4-H. How many of you, by chance, grew up in 4-H? Yes. All right. Can you stand up and say the pledge, please? No, I'm just. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we have started our club. So with our bees, I work for Wake County Cooperative Extension Service with NC State, but I am actually a county employee, and we're just a weird hybrid in Wake County. And many years, 20 odd years ago, I was a volunteer, and I volunteered with kids at my farm and have literally watched some of our young people grow from itty bitties and mature and go on to other things. And as an employee, I want to see that happen again. I see the benefits that 4-H brings to our young people on many, many levels. I don't know where I am with the slides. So what is 4-H? It's part of corporate extension, which is pretty vast. I'm assuming most of you know or are familiar with corporate extension. Yeah, because we've got ag, natural resources, family and consumer sciences, 4-H youth development, and community resource development. Our pledge. So our kids will say this at the beginning of every single meeting, and it becomes ingrained and it becomes a way of life. And it really does make an impact on their futures. So within our county or within our 4-H programs, we have various areas that we focus on. Leadership is a big deal, and you start off with your itty bitties and they get to have officer positions. They get to teach each other about things that they are familiar with and are important to them. And I think this is, to me, listening to you guys and watching the presentation, this is such a great fit. As you see here, we have our public speaking and mentoring. Our children do presentations, and they start off at the county level doing presentations. And I am literally seeing presentations on beekeeping, on bees, on native bees, on everything that there is to do with bees. It just falls right in place with what you're doing. And they go off at the county level for a presentation, and then they will go on to this district and state levels. So that's really exciting to me to see that we'll be able to do that. Our civic engagement, again, we have teen councils, but our children in general we really promote that civic engagement. Connectedness, we have a lot of different areas that they can participate across the county and collaborate with other programs to bring in kids to different things that they have not done before. So they may have always, we've got horse kids. That's all they've ever known. That's what they do, but it helps cross-pollinate into different areas. Okay. You'll see up on, there was, I'm sorry, the field trips. So if anybody likes children and would like them to come and visit your apiaries, we're all about it. The 4-H model is learn by doing. So we don't just talk about stuff. We don't just teach it. They actually have to do it. And that is really key to really ingraining and for them to become responsible. And yeah, everybody knows it with our youth, the more we can all do together and support them, the better. I am going to hand over to Gabby because Gabby was one of my 4-H's, yay big. And she is the leader of the Growing Minds Club. I just said we need to change it to Growing Young Minds so we can say we've been to the gym. But no, she said no, stop messing around. But Gabby is the one really taking the lead on this. And here you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. I was fortunate enough to be one of those tiny little 4-H'ers on her farm, probably about 15, 20 years ago. Hopefully not that long. But 4-H was an absolutely integral part of what sparked my love of agriculture from a very young age. It really encourages youth to, like Emma said, you don't just learn, you do so much. And you can hit the next slide for me. Oh, you put it up here. Oh, thank you. So membership is very open. We have a really large age range right now, which is really exciting to me because it is really important to start as young as possible. There are a lot of studies out there that show that youth and kids these days do not understand where our food comes from. So, getting to expose them to this at such a young age or an older age is absolutely integral. And I'm so excited because we do have kids all the way from that 5-year-old age up to 13, which is amazing. Our main focus is creating learning opportunities in agriculture. We have a very broad focus. I really want to encourage the kids to take on what they are interested in and to expose them to as many learning opportunities as possible. So for example, we are very focused on, of course, the beekeeping, which we are very excited about, and the pollinators. But for example, our next meeting we will be introducing the opportunity for livestock judging, many other things that tie into agriculture, which is very awesome. The club will also serve as a space to encourage leadership and public speaking. Presentations were one of the things that really prepared me for things like interviewing for college, job interviews. These are not just skills that the kids are going to learn and leave at the club. These are things that the kids are going to take all the way up, and I am using today. So I'm really excited because we are going to encourage that throughout all the age groups. And it's going to be really interesting to see what the kids, really come up with in terms of presenting to their peers. We are holding meetings every other Saturday right now. We are lucky enough to be able to use Emma's space, which is awesome. She has a beautiful 17-acre farm out in Southeast Raleigh. And that is where we have set up the beehive that is new. Thank you, Mr. Montague. We are so thankful for all the connections that you've given us. And yeah, that's kind of an overview of what we do as a club. Can you hit the next slide, please? So some of the things that we are doing as a club, so we are doing field trips, activities, service projects. So some of these things are including the last meeting, we started seeds for our pollinator garden that will be for the club. It's going to be a learning tool on site of the farm, which I'm really excited about. Not just have the kids observing, but also, helping create and build it from the ground up. Planning, what is the best implementation, what is going to make the bees succeed. So the kids it's really interesting to see the questions they come up with, and the excitement on their faces when you really get them to dig into that deeper level. It's really awesome. We'll also be doing some field trips to other places. Mr. Montague has been kind enough to invite us out to his apiary. And we are very excited about that. If anyone is kind enough to also have some sort of opportunity for the kids, I know that they would be really excited as well. So we're definitely open to that. And like I said, we are putting a huge focus on pollinators, beekeeping, and how does this tie back into agriculture, and why is this important? Because everything is so connected, and it's really amazing to see the look on these kids' faces when they, kind of dig into that and really understand that, because a lot of these kids have never seen a beehive, or they really don't understand the process behind it. So it's really amazing to be able to see the opportunities that we can provide, especially because I feel like it's just not there like it used to. I feel one of the reasons that it kind of inspired me to start this club was Wake County, there just aren't the opportunities anymore. So creating that was a really big goal, and to kind of keep that broad spectrum within. If you could hit the next slide for me. This was our first meeting this past week. You can see the horizontal hive that Mr. Montague has connected us with, along with some very generous donors. We have, like I said, we have a very wide age range of kids, which is really exciting. It's really cool to see everyone come out and get excited. I wish we didn't have to have masks on, but and this is one of the activities we did at the meeting. So we learned how to read seed packets, and we started planning our pollinator garden that will be eventually around the beehive, but it's not 100% right. But getting them to really, what does this mean in terms of planning? What type of plants are going to be the best for the pollinators? What is going to attract the best? So that's one of the things that we're really starting to explore with the kids. And at a young age, it's really cool to see them. They are very capable of understanding, even if we do keep it at a basic level. The kids are really excited, and they're really grabbing onto this information, which is very exciting. And I think that is the last picture from our meeting. I will turn it back over to Mr. Montague now. Thank you so much. Yeah.
One question, but and certainly answer this question, but we're gonna Emma and Gabby are going to hang around till the end, and I'm going to quickly go through my slides, and if we could have a question and answer period at the end would be great.
I'll absolutely answer your question.
Okay. Is this thing working again? Okay. Most of the photographs that you'll see were taken in my apiary and in my yard. Thoroughly enjoy photography, thoroughly enjoy bees, and thoroughly enjoy plants. This was an accidental photograph. You don't stage a bee and a butterfly like that together. So I was very, very lucky. I probably would take 500 photographs and only one of them is ever used. But anyway, we're going to teach the kids, and shouldn't call them kids, young people, right? What we're going to do from my standpoint is to talk about pollination, pollinators, not just honeybees, but use honeybees as a primary example, and plants. We're going to talk about pollination and how it's done. We're going to talk about managing honeybees, and we're going to certainly talk about pollinator-friendly plantings. And I'm going to go through parts of the first one and the second one, But everybody in here knows a lot more about managing bees than I do. So I'm not going to try to go through that. Pollination and how it's done. So pollination is essentially taking pollen from the male part of the flower, which is the anther, over to the stigma, which is the female part of another flower. That's essentially what it is. And it's done by lots of different organisms in lots of different ways. It's done by wind and water and a lot of insects. We're going to see if this works. But it's a messy affair. Pollination is a messy affair. Let's see if this works. Does it work? Nope. Okay. Well, this, we don't have to show it. Let's just skip it. This short video is to show how a honeybee goes down into a flower and works in a flower. One of the things, we'll talk about native bees also in a few minutes, but one of the differences between native bees and honeybees is that native bees are always after pollen. Honeybees typically are after nectar. They gather pollen, but they're not as efficient as native bees, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But this is what the bee looks like when they come out of a flower a lot of times. Talking about pollination, this is one of my bees, was one of my bees on goldenrod in the fall. You can see she's cleaned herself up a little bit and got pollen in her pollen sacs. Bees pollinate, wasps pollinate, flies are pollinators, butterflies are pollinators, moths are pollinators, beetles are pollinators, hummingbirds are pollinators. Once in a while, there'll be a standoff, but typically nobody gets hurt. I found that on the web. Even bats are pollinators. And for me personally, fortunately, they are pollinators in the tropics. They are not here in North Carolina. Okay, and we have a lot of what we eat. We have to credit honeybees for being able to provide the pollination they do for us to eat. What is it? 1 out of every 3 bites of food is attributable to some pollinator. Okay, we're not only going to talk about honeybees, but we're going to talk about native bees. And I take thousands of photos. And I started going back through my photos and noticing not only the honeybees that I had focused on, but also native bees. I never saw this little carpenter bee, miniature carpenter bee, when I took the photograph of this honeybee. This is on Tartarian aster. Okay. Bees feed the world. You've seen this more than once. 235 billion plus globally, 15 billion in the United States, and $186 million worth of value that pollinators add to our economy. How many bee species are there in the world? Good answer, good safe answer. How many do you think? 20,000. How many different species of bees are in North Carolina? 4,000. How many in North Carolina? 500. And the thing that amazed me talking with Dr. Elsa Youngstad at NC State, there may be 70 different species of native bees in my backyard. Can you imagine that? That just amazed me when I saw it. Here's a test for you. How many pollinators do you see in here? I see 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 6. Just to show you that we're not seeing everything we think we see. Anybody see 6? And the anole, that's my pet anole. The anole does not count. Take a look at this. That's that's the size of some native bees. And we're going to talk to the 4-H club about that. Take a look at this. This is the head of a female carpenter bee. This is the smallest bee in the United States on top of it there. This particular bee is in the western part of the United States and pollinates cactus. But see the difference in sizes. Some of them are no larger than a mosquito, and you can see that why we don't ever see them. Again, this is a small carpenter bee. This is a honey bee. I got this last fall. This is a sweat bee and a carpenter bee. I saw them outside. I'd been wanting to get photographs of smaller bees, ran inside and came back, and fortunately, they were still there. Here's another one that was in my yard. Dr. Elster Youngstadt identified that, but when I sent her the photograph, I didn't see the other little bee that's down below it. So we're missing a lot from the standpoint of going out and looking at the flowers and stuff that we grow. Okay, managing honeybees. We're going to talk to the kids about the children, club members, about managing honeybees. And we're going to use the hive that we've got as an example. Let me ask you this question about the difference between native bees and honeybees. You've got an apple orchard. It may take 10,000 to 250,000 honeybees to pollinate that apple orchard. How many native bees do you think it would take? Do the same job? 250. 250 mason bees can do the job of 10,000 to 250,000 honeybees. They are more efficient at pollinating. They're something like 100 and sometimes more efficient individually as pollinators. But honeybees get the credit, and rightfully so, because we can put them in boxes, take them to farms, and there's a lot more of them, a lot more manageable. We're going to talk about and teach the children, club members, about what the bees do themselves to manage the inside of the hive and what we as humans do. We're going to talk about the anatomy of a bee, the history of beekeeping, colony management by the bees themselves, what they would do as humans to help. And also we want to provide them some hands-on experience, hopefully a hands in the hive. This is the hive that a friend of mine donated the money to purchase. His name is Manley Wilder. He lives in North Raleigh now. I worked with him when I worked with USDA. He also worked with the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources back when it was several years ago. But he's a friend of mine. He's a lifetime member of a lot of organizations that deal with conservation. He also won the Lifetime Achievement Award for 4-H. This hive was also built by, was built by a friend of mine in Chapel Hill. It's a custom-made hive. It's a long hive. I want you to try something. Go to a paint store and say, I want 4-H green. That took me forever to find a paint store that could produce 4-H green, but I got 3 coats on it and it's ready to go. And we're also going to provide them with a native bee nest box. We hope we'll have some success with this. I'm just learning about native bees and I don't know really what I'm doing, but we'll learn with them. Also, pollinator friendly plantings. This also is from my yard. Back when I decided to keep bees, I wanted to make sure that I upheld my responsibility not only to keep bees, but to help provide some resources for them to use. We're going to talk about why we need to plant for pollinators, how we're going to do it, what we're going to do it, and also provide the club members with resources. You say, why? We can believe what we want to believe about climate change. We've got our own opinions. Everybody's got their opinions about it. We're entitled to that, but we're not entitled to our own set of facts. I think that politician said that some time ago. But there are facts that say that Earth is reaching its carrying capacity for a lot of things. And when I read that and heard that, I thought about my yard. Here I put 300,000 bees in it. And what did I do to that little bitty ecosystem? What did I do to the 70 species of native bees? So I got to thinking, maybe I should do what I can do in my own yard. And this is what these two books are about. Do what you can in your own yard. If you save your own backyard, you'll save the world. And that's what we're going to try to teach the 4-H club members. But how? Just plant something, no matter whether it's one plant in a pot or you redesign your entire yard with the help of an architect. Do something to provide some resources for bees. Again, a single plant, this was a mistake that I made, but it still shows up as a plant. Plant a little small area if you can't plant, if you have some room. Redesign your entire yard. You know, notice down at the bottom, Preston Montague, that's my son. He's a landscape architect, but I'm not advertising for him here. But if need be, and if you got the money, get an architect to help you. We'll be using this book to talk about planting for pollinators. It's by 2 professors from NC State. It's a great book if you've not read it. And now we're going to go through the gardens at my home. These are my 2 granddaughters, Hallie and Emmy. The apiary and the gardens are the Hallie and Emmy bee garden. So it's been a pleasure to work with them in planting the plants. And just go quickly through some of the photographs there. This is my backyard and the apiary at one point. I put the water feature in probably 25 years ago, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I thought it's in the top 5, I think. I thought I would get by with 1 pallet of rocks, and they're, 2 tons in a pallet? I ended up with 6 tons of rocks, and it turns out that I had to handle each one of those rocks 3 times. So 18 tons of rock that I had to move. My neighbor came over and said, "Hey, why don't you fix one of these for me?" I said, "Absolutely. You put $250,000 in my pocket and I'll do it." But anyway, that's a good place to sit and watch the bees in the afternoon. I also developed a part in my front yard specifically as a pollinator garden. I took this section out and enlarged it over the past couple of years, planted a heck of a lot of plants, and it's turned out fairly well. I'm really pleased with it. Here it is in the fall. These tall plants are Tartarian aster. I don't know if you've ever seen those or planted those, but bumblebees and carpenter bees just absolutely love those. Let's see if we can play this. This is what we want to really do. You clicked on the link. It should be embedded in the video, in the program. Ta-da-ta. Not at my age. In fact, it's past my bedtime. Anyways, as he's attempting to find it, again, what we want to do is to teach the children about, I tell you, let's just go to the next slide. Oh yeah, okay, we'll just end with that. That was a PR, couple of minute slide on teaching the younger generation about bees so that they'll understand it and appreciate it. One of the things that I wanted to do tonight is to ask you for help. I'm reminded, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and the preacher was preaching one day about tithing. And he said, before this church does anything, we're going to have to crawl. And the congregation chanted back and said, "Let it crawl, Reverend, let it crawl." And he said, after we've crawled, we're going to get up and walk. Congregation said, "Let it walk, Reverend, let it walk." He said, after we've walked, we're gonna run. He chanted back, let it run, Reverend, let it run. And he said, and for this church to run, it's gonna take some of your time and money. And there was a pause, and they chanted back, let it crawl, Reverend, let it crawl. What we're gonna ask you for I'm asking you for as a club member is for some help. Especially with dealing with that hive. I live in Cary, the hive is in Clayton. So if we get somebody that lives near Clayton, maybe to help me do some inspections and stuff, that would be great. Maybe visit with the children at one of the club meetings might be okay. We're going to get the bees and some equipment from Garden Supply Company, but maybe we'll ask for some help in that. I've applied for the 4-H grant through the State Beekeepers Association, but that's on hold. We may need some moral support there to convince the State Beekeepers Association to give us that particular grant. I think everything's on hold until the spring meeting in March. Okay. So Emma and Gabby, if you would come back up, try to answer questions about what we plan to do. Anybody have any questions or suggestions for that matter? Yes, ma'am.
Does the program have a website? So our club specifically, thank you. So she were asking if our club has a website or if 4-H has a website. We're asking the club or 4-H in general, actually. So our club, Growing Minds 4-H, has a Facebook page. It is brand new. Feel free to follow it. We're going to be posting meeting updates. We posted some pictures up there, and as well as announcements and all that good stuff. So Growing Minds 4-H Club on Facebook.
So do you have any plans for, say, Northern Wake County? Something similar?
Well, you should ask. The question was, do we have any plans for Northern Wake County? So luckily, I'm in the position with my job that I manage the clubs. And we have another new club in northern part of Wake County that once they learned what we were starting to do, they were really interested. So one of the things that I am beyond grateful to Mr. Montague for and would really appreciate the support is in the past, we had a club that thought they were going to do beekeeping. 4-H at this point does not have a protocols book. So if you know anything you do with children, there needs to be guidelines and processes, et cetera, to keep them safe. North Carolina is very strict on minors and compliance, but there's no handbook for starting a beekeeping club and safety. And they had a hive. They did all this stuff without really going through the proper channels. And we had a young lady that ended up in hospital with bee stings, and she will now forevermore have to carry an EpiPen. We want to make sure that does not happen by being able to put together a proper handbook for this and also the correct equipment that they cannot do this without the correct equipment. So to answer the question directly, we are putting this together, want to make sure it's a really good, solid program. And then that can be expanded out safely to other clubs and other youth organizations. Yeah.
But there is a club in Northern Wake County. They just aren't specifically doing beekeeping, is my understanding yet. Yeah, so enrollment is all online. If you want to go on our Facebook page, feel free to shoot us a message if you have any questions about that. I believe I just updated it and put the link in the description, so it should be in there. If you don't see it, just let me know and I'd be happy to help you out with any questions. It's all done through a 4-H online. So you'll go in and you'll pick us as a club and all that good stuff. Okay. Yeah. So Growing Minds 4-H Club.
Not open minds. We are open-minded.
We are open-minded.
I'll make a more formal request, maybe with some specifics as to what perhaps you can help us with, and also ask for suggestions on what we can do. But the main thing again now is giving me some help with the maybe some inspections. We appreciate it. We look forward to developing the youth in beekeeping, and we hope that this will be a model for other clubs to follow. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.